In this world, there's two kinds of people, my friend. Those with loaded guns and those who dig. Broadcasting from a Montana wilderness fortress at the headwaters of the Missouri, this is Matt Christiansen Live.
Want to get your reaction to this breaking news that President-elect Trump intends to nominate Kash Patel to serve as the FBI director.
It's a terrible development for the men and women of the FBI and also for the nation that depends on a highly functioning, professional Federal Bureau of Investigation.
Shut up, faggot.
The installation of Kash Patel as FBI director can only possibly be a plan to disrupt, to dismantle, to distract the FBI.
Congratulations, butthead.
Good. This country has been there before. The pre-Watergate FBI struck fear in the hearts of Americans. Is that where we're going back to?
I doubt it.
You are fake news.
You talk like a fag, and your shit's all retarded.
Very fake news.
Get out from America, go back to where you came from, okay?
I agree with that.
I've become friends with school shooters.
Bad.
All right, America, go to the YouTube right now.
Skag free whoever he is.
Dude, Matt straight up sucks.
In 5, 4, 3.
I can't do it. We'll do it live. We'll do it live!
Fuck it, we'll do it live!
Hello and welcome to the show. This is Matt Christiansen Live for Sunday, December 1st, 2024. Thank you for tuning in. Hope you had a great Thanksgiving. And up top, I'm sorry to disappoint. No, I will not be formally addressing the viral gay YouTuber encounter rumor of the week.
That's disgusting.
Not that I am above such subject matter, of course. It's just that I don't have any information on it, and where I have no information, I don't speculate in that sort of defamatory way. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, good. You live a better life than the rest of us, free from the excesses of X, formerly known as Twitter. Later in the show, I'll play a segment I recorded with my friend Alison Morrow, a former TV reporter turned independent. She's always doing interesting interviews. This week she talked to Richard Mack, the founder of the Constitutional Sheriffs and Peace Officers Association. What the hell does that mean? Well, it means feds fuck off. That's what it means. And of course, I always enjoy a good feds fuck off story. So I'll get to that in the second half. Before that, breaking within just the last couple hours. Originally, NBC was reporting, now Joe Biden has released a statement and confirmed it. He will, in fact, or has already pardoned his son Hunter after saying throughout the term of his presidency that he would not. I'll get into the details momentarily. Trump has picked Kash Patel for FBI director, and all the right people are crying about it, so I will be encouraged about that. The New York Times publishes a personal family email to say that Defense Secretary nominee Pete Hegseth is a woman abuser. The owners of the late Peanut the squirrel, and of course his often forgotten raccoon companion Fred, they're now suing the state of New York. And in the Thanksgiving spirit, I have a cornucopia of hoax hate to end the show as well. Catch up with your Superchats, of course, $10 and up on the Sunday show because I am a no-good, low-down money grabber. My sources say our friend Knuckle Hunky Buck will join us once again to read Super Chat, but we'll see. That I have some information to suggest the duct tape might be a little loose this evening, so we'll give it a shot in about an hour and see how that goes. But hey, speaking of, if you enjoy the show, please consider supporting the show. You can do that for as little as $1 a month over on my website. That's mattchristiansenmedia.com. Or if you can't type all of that, mattis.gay. Listener support. That's a real website for people who don't know. mattis.gay. I swear it's not even a troll. Type it in, see what happens. Head to the support page. You'll get the options to support the show and my material. Support for my material is what keeps the operation running. Of course, it's hugely appreciated. There are perks available for certain levels of support as well. MattChristiansenmedia.com/support, of course, linked in the description. And we got to say hi to our featured listener-owned business for the evening as well. This week's featured business is our friends at Western Razor Company. We know we're being lied to on a daily basis by our government, by corporate media, and by razor companies too. Think about it. Their ads used to appeal to your masculinity. Then they took advantage of your sensitivity with aloe strips. They kept adding blades, thinking you wouldn't notice how clogged they got. And the more they changed, the more plastic and disposable they became. The honest truth is those other razor brands are lying to your face. And our friends at Western Razor aren't going to take it anymore. That's why their safety razors are 100% metal construction, made in the USA and made with integrity. The replacement blades are inexpensive too, so you get a great shave and you save money because when you buy from Western Razor once, it lasts forever. Makes a great Christmas gift option as well, of course. Listeners can get 10% off any order when they use promo code MATT10 at checkout. Don't let those other razor brands lie to your face. Go to westernrazor.com and order yours today. Western Razor, the last razor you will ever need. You can find everything you need from our friends at Western Razor, plus other great offers from the rest of my friendly listener-owned businesses like Hero Soap Company, Phoenix Ammunition, Hope Innovations, and more. That's all at mattchristiansenmedia.com/deals. Deals by listeners, for listeners. And of course, speaking of our friends over at Hero Soap Company, they just launched the Freedom Box right in time for the holidays. Great gift option for Christmas. The Freedom Box features 4 new exclusive soaps, all inspired by the triumphs of American history. Boston Tea Party is clean, fresh, and calming. Over Mountain is woodsy. Frontiers is masculine. And Liberty Cleanse is woodsy, sweet, and musky. Pick up all 4 with the Freedom Box from Hero Soap Company, now shipping. Remember, listeners of this show get 10% off everything from our friends at Hero Soap using promo code MCListener. One quick item before we hop into the news. As longtime listeners of this show, or now this show and its former iteration know, there are probably no listener groups out there who are more dedicated than our listeners down under. And I mean that in the most general sense, as in listeners all across the continent and or country of Australia, because they gather for a Christmas party each and every year, and they come from all over the country. And I got to talk to them on Friday evening, as I have for the last several years. This year they are in Gold Coast. And as always, it is my honor to know that good friendships have been built through this show. If you'd like to connect with other listeners of the show, of course, you can find a spreadsheet of contacts on the community page of my website, mattchristiansenmedia.com/community. But after I had this discussion with them, I realized I forgot to ask the most important question. I didn't connect the dots. They're in Gold Coast. Did they, in fact, get to a Gold Coast Mariners soccer game featuring Sabit and Gore? I don't know that much about Gold Coast, other than it's somewhere in the middle of the east coast of Australia. If the east coast looks like a cat, it's somewhere between the ear and the mouth of the cat. But I do know that exciting young soccer player Sabit and Gore plays for the Gold Coast Mariners. Unfortunately, I forgot to ask the group, did you get to a Mariners football match to see Sabit and Gore in action? I want to know if he is indeed a real Ngor, or if he is, just a fake-ass Ngor.
He said the N-word.
I'll have to continue to wonder. But in the real news, just about an hour ago, NBC reported, and now the statement is out there, Joe Biden is pardoning his son Hunter. It's all official. The White House has put the statement out. This pardon will protect Hunter in both of his active cases, but it's much broader than that even. So recall, Hunter Biden has a gun charge case. He lied on the federal paperwork about being a drug user when he bought a gun. And then there's his ongoing tax evasion case as well. He was already convicted in the gun case. That happened in June. He pleaded guilty in the tax evasion case. That happened in September. And he was scheduled for sentencing in both cases this month. Now that's not happening. A senior White House official says Biden made the decision over the weekend. And if you look into the statement, let me see if I can. It actually has the formal stuff here after the White House statement. And it says a full and unconditional pardon. And it says the period from January 1st, 2014 to today, December 1st. So yeah, as far as I understand, that means anything and everything he possibly could have done within that decade-plus span. And if you're curious, yes, 2014, it's not just an even decade's time. 2014 is about the time that Hunter joined the board at Burisma, the Ukrainian energy company, which is presumably why this start date was selected. Hunter Biden, of course, has done a lot of stuff over the last decade. And so maybe it's easier just to say full and unconditional pardon rather than pardon related to these matters or those matters. He's done a lot of stuff. But this, of course, is a total reversal of Joe Biden's stance throughout his term. He repeatedly said he would not do this. In fact, the montages are already out there. Here's Karine Jean-Pierre saying many, many times, Joe is not going to pardon Hunter.
Second one, would the president pardon or commute his son if he's convicted?
So I've answered this question before. It was asked of me not too long ago, a couple of weeks ago, and I was very clear, and I said no.
Okay. Let me go back to the first question of the briefing. I know you said not a lot's changed since yesterday and that it's a personal matter, but from a presidential perspective, is there any possibility that the president would end up pardoning his son?
No.
Again, you've also said several times that the president would not pardon or commute the sentences for his son, Hunter. I just want to make sure that that is not going to change over the next 6 months. The president's saying he would not.
It's still a no. It's still a no.
It will always be a no.
It's still a no. It will be a no. It is a no, and I don't have anything else to add. Will he pardon his son? No.
Second one,
it will be a no until now, actually, in which case it's a yes. And in his official statement, I mean, if you're bothered by the pardon, just wait till you read the statement. I have no business being surprised by any of this. Of course, it was going to go this way, and of course, Joe Biden was going to release a statement victimizing himself and victimizing Hunter. Yeah, there was no other way for this to go. In his statement, Joe Biden says many things. Among them, I haven't reversed my stance on pardoning Hunter. I stuck by my word, actually. Quote, I said I would not interfere with the Justice Department's decision-making, and I kept my word, even as I have watched my son being selectively and unfairly prosecuted. So it's everyone else's fault. He actually upheld his end of the deal. But what happened to the rule of law? What happened to the respect for institutions? What happened to the principle that nobody's above the law? Well, he didn't expect people to get so partisan in their political attacks, of course. He says the charges only happened because of his political opponents in Congress. The quote here, the charges in this case came about only after several of my political opponents in Congress instigated them to attack me and oppose my election. Okay. If that's the case, if it was all political nonsense drummed up, it wasn't true, why did the DOJ pursue it? And not just why was there a special counsel appointed and the whole investigation happened. If there is no factual basis to it, how did they secure a conviction? How did they persuade a jury in the case of the gun charge trial? How did they why did Hunter Biden admit to much of it regarding the guilty plea in the tax evasion? Now, this statement, this sentence I find to be particularly egregious. Quote, no reasonable person who looks at the facts of Hunter's cases can reach any other conclusion than Hunter was singled out only because he is my son, and that is wrong. Okay, implicit in that statement is that everybody on the jury is an unreasonable person. Special counsel David Weiss, the people who investigated the case, they're all unreasonable people. Okay. How could it be that everyone who looked at and that's just as a matter of law. People who look at it from a layman's sense and see what the Biden family has done, it's not a bunch of unreasonable people who have questions about the way the family has conducted itself far beyond the scope of just these charges, selling their influence for personal enrichment. Most laughably, though, Joe Biden closes, for my entire career, I've followed a simple principle. Just tell the American people the truth. Because that's what Joe and Hunter Biden are known for. That's what they've done their entire lives. They've told people the truth. And now they're just being punished for it. In other words, guy who weaponized federal law enforcement at all available opportunities throughout his term is mad that his degenerate son got caught in some stuff. But as I mentioned, the reality, of course, is that he and his son deserve justice far beyond these ticky-tack charges. and the convictions associated with them, or the guilty plea, far beyond what that achieved. The problem with the Bidens is not lying about drug use when buying a gun. The problem with the Bidens is not evading taxes. The problem is they've been selling their influence, the power of their offices, or Joe Biden's office, for personal gain and enrichment. They've made an entire career of that. That's the problem with the Bidens. So I think for Joe, this pardon idea was always the plan. Just let it play out, give it the appearance that we're gonna actually abide by the rule of law, and we're not going to protect Hunter, and we're going to go through the trials, and we're actually going to let him be sentenced. But when it actually comes time to leave office, you go ahead and pardon him, assuming that they had planned on leaving office before. Who knows what their plan for re-election was? But I'm saying the idea was to let this play out in terms of the trial, and then deal with it after the fact. Joe Biden is acting like something has changed. As a matter of fact, and it's hilarious. Of course, it has not. No facts have changed at all. The only thing that's changed is the political calculation here. Joe Biden is a lame duck president. He's leaving office. He knows that his son's sentencing is coming up in a couple weeks. Well, what do I have to save at this point? I don't have any political credibility that matters anymore. Might as well just save Hunter on my way out. There's also the question now, or there was the question of how the new Congress would handle Hunter Biden. Presumably now they won't. They could still investigate Hunter Biden's dealings or the Biden family dealings for the sake of the truth, or for holding those associated accountable. But even if they found rock solid proof of a Hunter Biden crime within the last decade, it's a full and unconditional pardon. They can't go to the DOJ to bring any charges, at least federally. So I guess they're going to have to take the Fani Willis route and get him on state charges. So all you state attorneys general who are licking your chops, now is the time to shine, I guess. I am actually a little bit surprised by this move. I know I said I wasn't. It's predictable. It is. I guess what I'm saying, I'm surprised this is the way they did the pardon move, because I thought there was some legitimacy to what was speculated to be a developing deal between Trump and Joe Biden, in which case Joe Biden would pardon Donald Trump before he leaves office, and in exchange, when Trump gains office, he would pardon Hunter Biden. And in doing that, it would be this great moment of national unity coming together, and they would both get to deal with these legal problems while having a plausible deniability about any appearance of corruption. For whatever reason, maybe that deal was never on the table. Maybe it was all speculation. There was no truth to it. Trump was never willing to participate in that. Certainly possible. Whatever the motive, Joe Biden came to his senses and says, well, what am I doing? I'm Joe Biden. Corruption is my middle name. So I'm a corrupt liar who must do corrupt liar things on the way out. And I guess he and Hunter will get away with this until he soon dies, presumably.
Come on, man.
If he hasn't died already many, many years ago. So that's the pardon news. Again, this is breaking within the last couple hours. So by the time you listen to this show, there might be more information on this. Definitely check up on it yourself. But in other Joe Biden news, we all kind of forget that he is actually the president, supposedly, and he is the functioning president for the next couple months. I think Joe Biden obviously forgets that he's president and has forgotten quite some time ago as well. So I suppose we have that to forgive ourselves with. But in full demonstration that he and Democrats have learned nothing from their electoral loss, responding to reporters over the weekend, Joe Biden stuck with the line that lost the election. No, things aren't that bad. You guys just think things are bad because the media keeps telling you that, or because you're wrong about your own economic experiences. But Biden was in Nantucket, Massachusetts for Thanksgiving, and a reporter asked him what his message for Americans is, Americans who are worried about the future. And Biden said, well, everything is awesome, actually. It's just people don't hear enough good news. That's the problem. This video is from C-SPAN. It's a little bit spotty, so bear with it.
Mr. President, there are many Americans who are worried about the future this holiday season. What is your message to them?
My message is to just remember who you are. Look, I remember a couple weeks ago the survey done, how people feel about where they are. It was 62%, 35% thought they were doing pretty well. What do they think about the direction of the country? 35%, only 35% or so thought moving in the right direction. I think there's an explanation for that. You turn on the television, you don't see a lot of good news. Even the stuff that is good news doesn't seem to sell very well. And so, when you turn on the TV, everything looks bad.
Of course, I would grant the point that media shape opinion quite strongly. They made Kamala Harris a at least semi-viable candidate, after all. But for Joe Biden to complain that those in media don't give him enough positive coverage is hilarious. They worshipped him for having a pulse for months until people got to see him unfiltered in the debate and the disguise could no longer be maintained. But Biden's answer was actually completely contradictory as well. He says, well, the media, they're constantly feeding everyone bad news, and so people think things are worse than they actually are. Then he added that nobody watches or reads mainstream media anyway. The quote is, if you turn on the TV, everything looks bad. Everything looks bad. And now you have an exceedingly small number of people watching mainstream television and reading the newspapers. So the media apparently makes everyone think that things are far worse than they actually are, but also nobody pays attention to the media. Make it make sense, but little does from that old man brain. Most importantly to the substance here, though, once again, it is a denial of the basic fact that people get their political opinions legitimately from their actual experiences. They're not installed in their brains by someone else. People have lived this stuff. Wow, groceries sure are expensive. Wow, energy sure is expensive. Wow, there sure are a lot of probable illegal immigrants in my community. Wow, there sure are a lot of criminals getting released and then committing crimes again. Wow, the government sure is spending a lot of my money, or money they made up that we don't actually have, on forever wars across the globe. And all of these viewpoints, all of these consequences are directly attributable to Democrat policy. Any explanation otherwise is delusion. But the other big piece of news over the weekend, last night, Donald Trump announced on Truth Social that he has selected Kash Patel as his nominee for FBI director. Trump, of course, also picked the current director, Christopher Wray, after he fired James Comey in 2017. Usually, FBI directors serve 10-year terms. Christopher Wray has made clear that he will step aside if Trump wants him to step aside. The nomination of Kash Patel demonstrates he wants Christopher Wray to step aside. Trump said in part in this Truth Social announcement, Kash is a brilliant lawyer, investigator, and America First fighter who has spent his career exposing corruption, defending justice, and protecting the American people. This FBI will end the growing crime epidemic in America, dismantle the migrant criminal gangs, and stop the evil scourge of human and drug trafficking across the border. Kash will work under our great Attorney General Pam Bondi to bring back fidelity, bravery, and integrity to the FBI. Now, I actually don't know a lot about Kash Patel personally. I've seen him in passing. I haven't followed him closely, but some background and a quick summary of his career. He was a public defender in Florida for 8 years, in Miami-Dade County. He was also a federal public defender. In 2014, he was hired as a trial lawyer for the National Security Division of the Justice Department. He then became a legal liaison for the Joint Special Operations Command. In 2017, he was appointed as senior counsel for the House Intelligence Committee, and from there he connected with former Congressman Devin Nunes and played a large role investigating the origins of the Trump-Russia hoax during the 2016 election cycle. Kash Patel authored the Nunes Report, which was released in 2018, detailing the FBI's abuse of foreign surveillance to spy on the Trump campaign, among other corruption. Since Democrats took control of Congress in 2019, Kash Patel has worked closely with Donald Trump, including on the board of directors at Truth Social. He was the deputy director of national intelligence under Trump in 2020 as well. And he released a book called Government Gangsters in 2023, in which he discusses the Russiagate hoax and other DC corruption. But what matters, of course, is his philosophy well, his experience does matter, but his philosophy is the reason that he's going to be put in this position, and it's what will be most closely evaluated during Senate confirmation. And most of what I see him saying is about, in his words, how to restore trust in the FBI, if such a thing is even possible. But he says that such a thing gets done primarily through transparency. Here he is recently on Fox Business Channel.
Kash, how do you believe Americans will regain trust in our most important law enforcement agencies?
One thing. Exposure of corruption. Put out the documents, put out the evidence. We only have gotten halfway down the Russiagate hole. The people need to know that their FBI is restored by knowing full well what they did to unlawfully surveil them. The people need to know that there has been a de-weaponization, a defanging of the Department of Justice, and their houses of worship will no longer be raided. But they need to be shown the documents that said this was the reasoning they weaponized justice.
Or Fox News Channel, rather, not Fox Business. But what he's saying there is not just to put a stop to these corrupt practices. It's to release all the information so the American people can assess how and why this happened and hopefully not repeat some of those mistakes. And I'm here for all of that. My only doubt is whether truth in the Bureau can in fact be restored, trust rather, not truth, but trust in the Bureau can be restored. Anyway, if you think that through this transparency you can do that, well, how do you achieve that transparency? Kash Patel has a specific idea. He says you establish a declassification office. He says a lot of the worst abuse that has come out of the FBI in recent years has been under the disguise of classification. They conceal their own actions, sometimes even their own criminality, by saying those details are classified, when in fact there is no basis for classification, or it's a weak basis for classification. He says these things should be publicly revealed.
Need a 24/7 declassification office. Sits in the White House, reports directly to you, and you take incoming from the United States of America. I want JFK. I want the 9/11 files. I want this. I want that. What the deep state uses the most to cover up their corruption is an illegal application of the classification system. Remember the Lovebirds texts from Strzok and Page were texting each other, who they were running the Russiagate investigation against Trump. They were the head of the counterintelligence unit at the FBI, and they're having an extramarital affair together. They're sending each other texts about how much they hate Trump and are going to create an insurance policy to stop Trump. Then we finally find those text messages. You know what the FBI and DOJ do for like a year? Redact them to congressional investigators and congressional men and women running the oversight of their agency. And that's the best form of transparency. That's why I want this 24/7 declassification office. Don't have me regurgitate it to you. Read it. Get the documents, get the files, get the memos.
Again, it's about you evaluating the information yourself, not just stopping the practice, but getting this knowledge into the minds of the American people. But what about valid classification? That would be the pushback. Surely we can't reveal all sorts of law enforcement or surveillance secrets. We will compromise important law enforcement and intelligence gathering if we just make everything public in this way. He's not saying everything public. His view is that a certain level, in fact, a large level of classification is necessary. He says it's just been overused and abused. He says we could probably declassify up to half the stuff and it would be of public benefit.
I believe you could get half out. Half. I still think the other half needs to remain classified. I'll always argue that it does serve a purpose. But like you're seeing in these documents in the Jack Smith case, they're just redacting stuff that they lied about, that they broke the law.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's used to protect themselves.
And it's a public document in a federal court, which is a document for the people of the United States. And we can have you run that office. You can come in and just be like, hey, I want all the Saudi documents.
I'll gladly do that.
I remember when I ran Russiagate, right? They came after me and said, if you put out the Nunes memo and you put this out that you wrote, our enemies and our allies are going to get murdered. No one died.
And it's important to recognize when Kash Patel and the FBI critics talk about the FBI abuses, they don't just mean what the FBI did to Trump, though that is very important. Biden's FBI, or the FBI in general, over the last decade or so, routinely abused everyday Americans. Think Mark Houck, the pro-life activist who was raided and dragged to trial because a Planned Parenthood escorter person the people who escort women to go get abortions and make sure that the protesters don't interfere with them. This escorter person went up to Mark Houck and his teenage son, reportedly called his son an F-slur.
You're a faggot.
And there was a shove in response. Now, at worst, this is some low-level thing. This was in the Philadelphia area. This is some low-level thing for Philadelphia police to evaluate. A guy called someone an F-slur, and then there was a shove. In fact, it was a guy harassing a minor, a teenager, and then there was a shove in response. No, this was a matter for federal law enforcement because Joe Biden's DOJ determined that Mark Houck and his son had violated federal law that protects the right to access abortion clinics. And so he had to be put on trial federally, his whole life upended. And what happened? He was acquitted. So they raided his home. They scared his children. They made this into a federal matter when at most it's something one cop in Philadelphia could have said, okay, you guys just separate and we'll call it a day. They made that a federal matter. They wasted everyone's time. They terrified this family. This is the sort of activity the FBI is engaging in recently. You can think Craig Robertson, the 75-year-old disabled guy in Utah who made, yes, spicy posts about Joe Biden. Posts about ending the life of Joe Biden. Yes, they were spicy. Yeah, it's probably reasonable to ask some questions about the post. Or about the post. I'm not concealing that. I'm not explaining that away. I am wondering why that justifies a pre-dawn raid on, again, a 75-year-old disabled man in which the FBI shot him dead and reportedly left his body in the cul-de-sac in public view for all the kids to see while they got on the bus to go to school. You can think Brian Malinowski, the airport director in Little Rock who didn't fill out the right paperwork when selling guns. So the FBI and the ATF, again, pre-dawn raided his home and shot him dead, too. You can think the FBI going to Mark Zuckerberg, telling him that he has to censor the Hunter Biden laptop story ahead of the 2020 election, as Zuck detailed with Joe Rogan in 2022, and as Zuck has since apologized for most recently, saying he regrets doing the FBI bidding. But maybe the most telling thing about this nomination, Kash Patel for FBI director, is how Andy McCabe feels about it. Now, recall Andy McCabe, who is now a CNN analyst. He was the FBI deputy director from 2016 to 2018. He was acting director under Comey, acting director rather, after Comey was fired in 2017. McCabe had leaked information to the Wall Street Journal and then lied about it, some of those instances under oath, to the two FBI investigators when they started looking at who was the source of these leaks. In other words, Andy McCabe represents the exact sort of corruption that probably would be very mad about the prospect of rooting out that corruption through Kash Patel serving as director of the Bureau. Last night on CNN, Andy McCabe said this is a terrible pick for the FBI because Kash Patel is such a Trump loyalist. And imagine if the FBI was politically weaponized to serve partisan purposes. Wow, how terrible would that be?
It's a terrible development for the men and women of the FBI and also for the nation that depends on a highly functioning, professional, independent Federal Bureau of Investigation. The installation, or the nomination, I guess we should say at this point, of Kash Patel as FBI director can only possibly be a plan to disrupt, to dismantle, to distract the FBI, and to possibly use it as a tool for the president's political agenda. This country has been there before, right? The pre-Watergate FBI, the J. Edgar Hoover FBI, struck fear in the hearts of Americans across the spectrum of politicians, people in entertainment, people in the civil rights community, because the director operated at the direction of presidents to collect political intelligence and to utilize the legal authorities, the investigative authorities of the FBI to terrorize and intimidate Americans. Is that where we're going back to with this nomination? Kash Patel would be the perfect person for Donald Trump to nominate if that's in fact his intent for the FBI.
Oh, are we going back to a time when the FBI used to terrorize Americans? How could we do that? That time is now. That time has been throughout your tenure. This has happened before. Yeah, it happened like yesterday. But he only remembers it decades ago, supposedly. A time when hardly anyone remembers. Political weaponization for partisan ends, he acts like it would be some strange change. No, that is the status quo. And of course, he's just going to ignore the elephant in the room, which would be the most partisan thing of all. The weaponization of foreign surveillance to spy on the Trump campaign. More information or potential update on the policy on that in a moment. We're just going to ignore that. We're going to ignore the targeting of American citizens for nonsense reasons with the full force of the federal government. Or how about Andy McCabe himself? Was Andy McCabe serving this honorable law and order nonpartisan purpose when he's leaking information and lying about it to make himself look good? How anybody believes Andy McCabe is a credible voice for the reputation and honor of the FBI is just hilarious. But of course, I guess this is CNN. McCabe's first point of criticism, if you listen to that segment, is actually that Kash Patel doesn't have the requisite experience. And that, to me, is the weakest of all the criticism. He has federal prosecution experience. Something like 60 trials, I read. He has federal intelligence experience. He has years of federal investigation experience in general, years in all of these areas, in fact. So it sounds like his entire professional career is directly relevant, actually. I think if it wasn't for the politics, you wouldn't be hearing this experience criticism. It doesn't mean he's uncriticizable, but the doesn't have relevant experience criticism, I don't understand at all. It seems like nothing but for the duration of his career. Politics aside, I think on paper anybody would say that he is completely qualified in terms of experience, and it's not like there is a set list anyway. The requisite experience is determined by the president who nominates the person and the Senate who confirms that person. So Andy McCabe's opinion about qualifications doesn't matter at all. But bottom line, if Andy McCabe thinks he's terrible, well, I would bet that means he's the greatest improvement that the FBI has seen in recent years, though in fairness, the bar's pretty low about, great things coming out of the FBI recently. Of course, the big question is, will Kash Patel be confirmed? Unclear. I've tried to find some Senate commentary over the weekend. A lot of people are busy or not doing news hits over the holiday weekend. Much like the nominations of Pete Hegseth, Tulsi Gabbard, you can assume probable Democrat unanimity in opposition. In this case, one, because in general they're Democrats, that's what they do. And two, Kash Patel is perceived as a political partisan. That means that this is going to be a question like those others. How many Republicans will fold? You got 53 Republican senators, rather. You can lose 3 of them and still get the nomination through with the help of J.D. Vance. In addition to Pete Hegseth and Tulsi Gabbard, as I mentioned, Patel's probably going to be one of the tougher picks for Trump to get through the Senate, but we'll have to see how it goes. Speaking of Tulsi, though, there is interesting news reported on regarding her as well, and regarding both her and FISA abuse, foreign surveillance abuse. It's reported this week that she and Trump agree on ending or seriously limiting the practice of FBI domestic surveillance through this method. Per The Economist. Now, the headline is Donald Trump and Tulsi Gabbard are coming for the spooks. I thought that was like a racial slur.
The N-word. You know what the N-word is?
I guess if you characterize the feds with such a slur, maybe that's a slur too. But not commonly do I see reputable publications refer to feds or law enforcement personnel as spooks. But all right. Per The Economist, Mr. Trump and Ms. Gabbard are both opposed to Section 702 of the Foreign Surveillance Intelligence Act, otherwise known as FISA, which authorizes electronic surveillance on American soil. It was renewed this year after a fierce debate in the Senate, but will lapse in 2026. The FISA court has proven to be a dependable rubber stamp for government requests, says Tulsi Gabbard. Not inaccurately, The Economist says. If Mr. Trump quashes it, the FBI will lose a major source of intelligence. So I assume it would be stopped as a matter of executive law enforcement policy. Just because Congress has authorized this practice doesn't mean the executive has to use it when doing investigations, doing law enforcement. But again, very good. If people don't understand how this works, or you've heard this referenced, but you don't necessarily know what it means, when the feds spy on foreign people, they don't need a warrant. So they will use foreign contacts with U.S. targets. That's speaking cynically, that they're actually targeting U.S. people, but they're using a foreign contact as the premise to do it. But they'll use these foreign contacts as an excuse to monitor U.S. citizens without a warrant. In fact, they use it to scoop communications from people simply connected to people who have spoken to foreign people, foreign targets of surveillance. It's called the 2-hop rule. So, for example, say you have a foreign surveillance target who talked to 20 people in the U.S., and each of those 20 people has also talked to 20 people. The feds will use that one foreign surveillance target and this 2-hop rule to potentially scoop the communication of 400 people, because they're going to scoop the communication of the 20 Americans that talked to that foreign surveillance target, and 2 hops, all the people removed, each of them have 20 friends. This is how Americans are spied on by our federal law enforcement without warrants on a mass scale. Again, one foreign surveillance target could produce hundreds, potentially thousands of U.S. citizens getting surveilled in this way, getting their communication scooped without a warrant. And it's so bad. How bad is it? Well, as you can see, the ACLU still cares about it. So it must be pretty bad. Of course, whatever worry we have about our foreign intelligence gathering capabilities when we start pulling back on some of these tactics, warrantless spying on Americans is a bigger concern, in addition to being fundamentally unconstitutional or anti-constitution, completely opposed to the founding American principles. So we'll see if Trump and Tulsi are serious about that. Of course, she has to get confirmed before this policy potentially becomes a reality. But again, good signs, good trajectory. As far as Pete Hegseth, Trump's pick for defense secretary, of course. They continue giving him the Kavanaugh treatment. He's a woman abuser. We heard about this last week when we got the police report from the 2017 incident in California in which Hegseth was accused of sexually assaulting a woman. Police report shows witnesses contradicting the claims of that woman. Police did not bring charges. Hegseth reached a settlement with that woman. He concedes the encounter happened, but it was consensual. Well, this week, we got a major piece of breaking news from the New York Times. One time in an email, Pete Hegseth's mom called him an abuser of women. On Friday, the Times published this shocking information. Back on April 30th, 2018, Penelope Hegseth, Pete's mom, sent him an email. And apparently the Times got this email from some source close to the Hegseth family. It's not from Pete's mom herself. In fact, Pete's mom opposes the publication of this email. It was done against her will, except for one sentence. The New York Times didn't publish one sentence because they say they redacted it for privacy reasons, as though this entire publication is not a privacy breach. Speaking of privacy, though, the anonymous source apparently connected to the Hegseth family, I guess, wants privacy for himself or herself, not willing to put his or her name out there. Doesn't care much about the privacy of Pete Hegseth's mom, though. Very telling. Anyway, Pete Hegseth's mom wrote back in April 2018, "Son, I have tried to keep quiet about your character and behavior, but after listening to the way you made Samantha," that's his, at the time they were getting a divorce, so that's now Pete Hegseth's ex-wife, Sam or Samantha. "After listening to the way you made Samantha feel today, I cannot stay silent. And as a woman and your mother, I feel I must speak out. You are an abuser of women. This is the ugly truth, and I have no respect for any man that belittles, lies, cheats, sleeps around, and uses women for his own power and ego. You are that man, and you have been for years. And as your mother, it pains me and embarrasses me to say that, but this is the sad, sad truth. It's time for someone, I wish it was a strong man, to stand up to you and your abusive behavior and call it out, especially against women. We still love you, but we are broken by your behavior, your lack of character. I don't want to write emails like this. Never thought I would. If it damages our relationship further, then so be it, but at least I've said my piece. Now, what behavior exactly Mom was referring to, unclear as far as I understand, but there is a problem with the implication that Mom stands by this characterization, because she doesn't. Of course, the email was sent 6 years ago, over 6 years ago. Does Penelope, Pete's mom, still think those things? Is Pete Hegseth still that guy? Well, Mom tells the New York Times, in reporting that corresponds with the publication of the email, that she actually sent a follow-up email sent him a follow-up email the next day. So May 1st, 2018, she apologized to him and said that she wrote that email to him out of frustration and emotion. So that's Mom backtracking then. Again, the day after that email was sent. Not Mom backtracking now. She's backtracking then when she doesn't necessarily have something to gain or Pete to protect. It's not her coming out all of a sudden now saying, oh, no, everything's changed since then. It's Mom backing out the day after this happened. Now, in fairness to the New York Times, supposedly Pete's mom told them she would provide that follow-up email to them for them to publish too. Apparently, she hasn't done that. But the New York Times, as you would expect, doesn't really deserve much, if any, fairness at all. Because they published this article titled, Pete Hegseth's mother accused her son of mistreating women for years, even though she, again, according to her own account, emailed the next day to take it back. And even though Mom's current stance is that's not true, he's not an abuser of women, the New York Times put out this article for free. It's a gift article. You don't need a subscription to see it in full. Wow, thank you for this early Christmas present, New York Times. Although I would certainly appreciate a complimentary New York Times hit piece for Christmas. I would frame mine. So Sharon Lafreniere, our author at the New York Times, if you're looking for someone who will be receptive to this sort of treatment, please send me an email. I'm interested. But bottom line here, even if it is true that Pete Hegseth had some bad episodes or poor judgment with women, which in all likelihood is true, the guy has had multiple wives. You don't do that unless mistakes were made. Okay. Number one, that doesn't actually tell us much about whether he's qualified to be defense secretary or not. But two, if we're digging into private family communication against the wishes of the family, we're not the good guys. Families, even healthy, intact families, are messy. They fight. They say bad things about each other and to each other in private. And if every fight that you ever had or I ever had with your parent or your kid or your spouse, if that became public, none of us would look very good. It really is a glimpse at us in our worst and most emotional and what are supposed to be our most private moments, which isn't exactly fair to anybody. Plus, we don't really have solid demonstration that any of this is true, at least the abuse angle. Again, multiple marriages, multiple women. Yeah, there's probably some questionable, regrettable behavior there. But the initial sexual abuse story from California is flat out not true. What's true in this divorce case? Well, we're getting Mom's side from one email, not even his ex-wife's side, and of course not Pete's side. So we'll see how much that matters to senators as they consider his nomination in the coming weeks and months. We also have an update in the Trump prosecution front. I discussed this on Wednesday. Jack Smith's formal motion to dismiss the Trump federal prosecutions in the Mar-a-Lago classified documents case and the January 6th case. Now, technically, those could return post-Trump presidency. They almost certainly won't. Those federal prosecutions, are dead. In New York, the judge may dismiss the Stormy Daniels hush money conviction outright. That's still being discussed. Either way, sentencing delayed there indefinitely. That is also effectively dead. So for the Trump criminal prosecutions, that leaves only Fani Willis in Georgia, which is still tied up in the Georgia Appeals Court to decide if Fani Willis can stay on the case or not, since she corruptly, or is alleged to have corruptly paid her boyfriend to handle the case. Well, this week it's reported that case is probably doomed too, according to sources speaking with the New York Post. The expectation is that the Georgia Supreme Court, when the case gets there through this appeal process, will likely just dismiss the case. The federal DOJ, according to policy and according to what Jack Smith mentioned, they don't prosecute sitting presidents. That's a formal matter of DOJ policy. It's also because constitutionally they probably can't anyway. A state prosecution for a sitting president is a slightly different question, but it hasn't happened before. So how this would proceed, I guess, is sort of legally gray. But like the federal DOJ, one would assume that the Supreme Court in Georgia, according to this expectation from this source, the proper resolution for a president's crimes, air quotes crimes in this case, the solution to that constitutionally is that the president is impeached, removed from office, and prosecuted as a private person. Now, presumably, the Georgia State Supreme Court would say something to that effect. You can't go after the current president. If you think he committed a serious crime, you bring that case to Congress, you let Congress evaluate and potentially remove him from office. But we'll see what the Georgia State Supreme Court decides on this when it eventually gets there. Now, remember, Fani Willis was actually reelected in November. Atlanta voters saw that she fleeced them to pay her boyfriend and herself, by extension, to run a sham prosecution at costs far higher than what is normal in that sort of proceeding. They saw all of that and they said, yes, please more. All that matters is that you're trying to get Trump and we really hate Trump. So even though it seems like this case is dead, and it probably is, I can't fully bet against Fani Willis's ego and corruption and the corruption of Atlanta politics in general. So I'm not going to count this one as over until the Georgia Supreme Court actually says it is. Before we get to the top of the hour here, another legal update. Recall, of course, the saga of Peanut the squirrel in New York State and his often forgotten or unmentioned raccoon companion, Fred. Well, the state of New York, of course, determined that the owners of these animals did not have the proper paperwork or certification for their animal sanctuary. And so instead of knocking on the door to talk about it, state agents in New York raided the property and they took those animals. Now, I guess Peanut bit one of the agents, so they said, that's it. It's time for a rabies evaluation, and the only way to test you for rabies is to kill you. So that's what happened to Peanut. I don't know. Did Fred bite anybody? They did it to Fred too. But according to the information I've seen, neither one of them actually had rabies. So it was all for nothing. But they are both with Harambe in heaven now, otherwise smiling down on a proper election outcome, one would assume. But Peanut and Fred's owners are not done. They've announced a plan to sue the state of New York. Mark Longo and his wife Daniela have filed a notice of claims against multiple state agencies. They say both human and animal rights were violated by that raid.
Peanut the squirrel and Fred the raccoon were seized from Mark and Daniela Longo and euthanized on October 30th to be tested for rabies.
We want to know how these procedures were, that they failed. Why was I asked about cameras in my house? Why was I detained for 5 hours without being arrested? Why was my wife's immigration status questioned? Why didn't I get due process? Why was I silenced? Why was I intimidated not to use my phone?
The notice of claims indicate pending legal action against the New York State Attorney General's office, DEC, State Department of Health, along with Chemung County, the County Health Department, Elmira Police, and Elmira Animal Control. Not only are the Longos claiming they and their animals were not granted due process, but they also say their First, Fourth, Fifth, and 14th Amendment rights were violated.
I don't want to take away the focus on Fred and Peanut. The justice is for these animals and moving forward to make sure. But that's a big thing for us. Is I've never been in trouble before. I've never been in the face of the law before. And then to have 9 people and 6 of them have guns show up to your house and detain you and falsely arrest you for 5 hours, it opens your eyes to how much this government is capable of.
Oh, but the law is the law, and they didn't follow the law. You listen to him talk, Mark Longo, the owner of Peanut and Fred and all the other animals at this animal rescue property. They actually were following the law and attempting to follow the law. The Longos were not housing these animals in defiance of state regulations or state orders. They had to get a certain certification, which they were actively doing. They had been cooperative with the state. They were working to comply with the rules. They were not attempting to defy the rules. So per this lawsuit, the Longos are seeking unspecified damages for emotional distress, personal and emotional injuries, pain and suffering, civil rights violations, and violations of their constitutional rights at the state and the federal level. Now, I have no idea if their claims have any chance in court. Consult your favorite New York lawyer for an answer to that question. My guess for the most likely outcome is that state agents will now come back to their house, this time with Governor Kathy Hochul personally, and she will execute them by high heel stomp to the face, something American History X style. Or maybe the state of New York will take care of Hochul instead, since she resembles a rabid beaver, as my friend Frank always says.
Definitely worth checking into.
She needs the peanut treatment for the safety of everyone involved in that state. But hey, we're right about at the top of the hour. Let me check in with my friend Hunky Buck to see if he's ready for some super chats again. I've heard reports of technical duct tape issues, so stand by. We'll see what's going on here.
I'm tethered to two different phones. Hopefully that's enough. Hopefully I'm getting enough connection between both phones that it's usable.
Looks good to me.
Sorry if it's not.
I was momentarily muted there for a second, but I'm glad I caught it. So I guess I can hit the button then, huh?
Yeah.
Sorry, I wasn't ready. Here we go.
Knock, knock. Who's there? Knuckles.
And now it's time for Super Chats with Knuckle Hunky Buck.
I'm a knucklehead at times.
All right. What do we got, sir?
All right. Just dive right in. I've got Aggie Jet Pilot over on YouTube. Won't be flying or walking for a while. Bad motorcycle wreck 2 weeks ago. Broken femur.
Oh.
So take some of my medical disability money. Don't worry, it's not welfare. It's private insurance I pay into.
Well, I'm just most concerned about the broken femur, man. That's a gnarly injury, and I'm really sorry to hear it. Have you ever, I've never witnessed one in person, but I've seen broken femurs in, say, football games on TV. You ever seen that happen?
No, I don't think so, but I've heard that is one of the most painful breaks.
Oh, it's got to be. I mean, yeah, it's the force required to break that bone is so much. And Aggie Jet Pilot, I hope you have a full recovery, man. I hope there aren't any kind of long-term consequences. And Godspeed to you. That's tough. And all the best to you.
Yeah, really sorry to hear about that. Okay, I've got Bocephus. Matt, I hope my super chat doesn't interrupt one of many commercials that are part of the show. Also, this January, it will be 2 years since the Golden One punched a tree in half, have you been training?
I haven't punched any trees in half. I try to do what I can, although I must confess, man, this Thanksgiving was I indulged plenty. How about you?
Punch a tree in half? What's that all about?
I meant your Thanksgiving, of course. But yeah, if you want to talk about tree punching, go ahead.
No. Well, Thanksgiving was good. Honestly, it's the time after Thanksgiving is always a little hard for me because there's so many leftovers around, and it brings up a bit of temptation. I actually used to be addicted to cold turkey. I was able to quit. I was able to quit cold turkey the only way that you can, of course, by
the connection is stealing your punchline, but I got it. All right. A little bit of a long setup, but it landed. Yeah. Thank you for that. I was tempted to steal it myself, but I didn't. I see where he's going. Injured Guardian. My words that Neil wrongfully deleted from this first chat on November 24th. P.S. Can we resume numbering Sunday episodes? It helps with references. P.P.S. Silence fools. Matt's wife is kind, wise, and based. Actually, I have to clear his name because Raja Mohan did not delete anything. That was me misunderstanding your chat, which I realized after the stream. He had called me out on my pronunciation of niche. I don't know if you caught that part because I think it was the second super chat read. And
you mean your pronunciation of niche?
At least it's not niche. I'll allow it. So he had called me out on that, and I forgot to read the rest of the chat. And then when he chatted later, I thought he meant that I missed a chat, as in I didn't read one, so I didn't do my due diligence of reading the chat thoroughly. Anyway, my apology for that, Injured Guardian. That was 100% on me. I won't even throw Raja Mohan under the bus for that. It was all my fault, but I certainly appreciate your support for the show.
And also, I found a link that we can direct anybody that has any questions about your wife or any of our family members, for that matter, too. So if you do have any inquiries about like any personal details about our family, just go to clintonfoundation.org/?I+have+information+that +could+lead+2+ the arrest of Hillary Clinton.
All right. These are long setups, but I'll allow them. Okay. Thank you. Injured Guardian. Appreciate it.
Okay, that was Injured Guardian. So next we got Justin Brush. This Biden pardon statement is the ultimate, come on, man, of Biden's presidency. I don't want to hear one word from Democrats about any pardons Trump issues.
Trump did just release a reaction, or he put out a reaction statement on Truth Social. I don't have it handy, but I got a text about it, so I can't put it up on the screen, but Trump did say, does the pardon, referring to the Hunter Biden pardon, does the pardon given by Joe to Hunter include the January 6th hostages who now have been imprisoned for years? Such an abuse and miscarriage of justice. So maybe that means Trump will be a little bit more aggressive about pardoning. I don't know. But of course, a critic would say, well, why didn't you pardon those people on the way out? You could have, and you didn't. But we'll see. We'll see what direction he decides to go with that.
I think Trump should just go full on aggressive Trump, like pardon anybody he wants to. Just at this point, like, yeah, with all the shenanigans, like he's earned a mandate. He should be able to just do whatever he wants damn near this term.
He's going to pardon you for your laundry neglect.
Don't worry about all that.
All right, you got Mint. Oh no, it's me. Never mind, it's me. Mint says, can I? Speaking of Rajaman, I think that's one of the slurs he allows. I don't know. Pajit nominated, points off. Sorry, Trump. It's the rules. I don't know. I've had some skepticism here and there, but I will say Kash Patel saying everything that I certainly appreciate. So if he's able to get into that office and do the things he's talking about, which is a big if, he's got a clear Senate confirmation. He's got to follow through on those things, defeating a lot of people in the Bureau who assuredly don't want this sort of thing to happen. I'm not predicting it will necessarily, but if he achieves the stuff he's talking about, then certainly credit where due. That would be pretty awesome. I've got some ready on Rumble if you're ready to go over there.
I got Yakko 1977. Uncle Bad Touch pardoning Hunter is just the start. He'll pardon plenty of scum before he leaves. If he could, I wouldn't doubt he'd preemptively pardon everyone on the Epstein and P. Diddy list.
I want to read the Joe Biden statement about P. Diddy. Yeah, that would be a good one.
I wouldn't be surprised if Hunter was buddies with P. Diddy and went to a couple of freak-offs himself.
It seems like they have a lot of overlapping interests. You're right. They probably would have had a good time together. If they didn't actually,
Anyway.
rather than just hypothetically. But I bought No Note, as is tradition. Thank you for correcting me.
Over
Elbot.
$200 billion.
Thank you, Elbot.
All right, I've got, I don't know how to properly pronounce this one. I'll call it Ogenmatic? Ogenmatic?
I would have guessed Ogenmatic. I don't know. I would have gone hard G, but
Yeah.
that's just me.
All right. The kettle is black, yelled McCabe.
Careful. But go for it.
And then we've got another one also from Ogenmatic, trying not to appear niggardly. McCabe yelled, "The kettle is black."
I am not going to be niggardly.
I didn't
Kind
think
of a
he was
double
trying to be
send on
cheap
that
about
one.
it at all. I thought he was wearing a very nice suit, actually. I didn't think he was niggardly in any way. Andy McCabe in his presentation. All right. Ninja
got
Kitty.
Ninja Kitty?
Yeah, thank you, Ogdenmatic. Ninja Kitty says, the deep state is a cornered fox. It is exhausted, wounded, and surrounded by the hounds. It will fight to the death to avoid Trump's cabinet picks. Yeah, this is going to be really interesting to watch. Kash Patel, I have no idea how to predict the outcome there on the confirmation. And of course, even if he gets in, the fights he's going to face win in are going to be serious. It is going to be interesting to see. It's going to be a great separator among Republican senators. We've seen several episodes of that already, but the margin is pretty slim. You know, you can lose 3 anymore, you're in trouble. And I do worry that there are more than 3 who would be willing to sink this particular idea.
I'm just curious to see with this whole thing with the shadow cabinet or whatever that they're talking about. Like, if they actually try to exercise any authority, like, that's basically just the deep state just coming out and admitting that they're the deep state.
I don't know what they could do from that stupid idea, though. It'd just be a whole fun show for Democrats and their entrenched interests. But how they would actually exercise power, I don't know. I guess the old school way they exercise power in D.C., by knowing things about people and threatening them with that information, I assume.
Yeah.
Deus Ex Machina Prime. You got that one?
Deus Ex Machina Prime. Yeah. Justice for Peanut.
Well, we'll find out. I have very little faith in the New York administrative state or justice system, but hey, good for them for challenging that nonsense. Let's see. I think we're all set on Rumble, right? Let me.
Looks to be.
I just have a couple here. I just have one over on Odyssey. I'll get that one and I'll let you go. It's just a very polite question. Hey, Matt, how was your Thanksgiving? It was very, very good. It was nice to relax for a minute and just enjoy some time with family and not deal with all the stresses of recent events and politics and all that insanity. So it was a good refresher. And I hope you had a great Thanksgiving as well. Blankets. Also, you can send a meme as a super chat over on Odyssey. That's amazing new tech. I didn't know this. I can't share this meme with you. But what does it say? It's an Alyssa. Oh, it's a fake Alyssa Milano tweet. I would rather have sex with a farm animal than a conservative. That's not even a meme, actually. Did she actually tweet this? I would rather have sex with a farm animal than a conservative male. At least the farm animal has a penis and can satisfy me?
That's disgusting.
The meme is silence conservatives. A horse fucker is talking. I've never heard of this. Did she tweet that? I'll have to investigate. All right. Well, thank you for stopping by. I'm glad the duct tape connection held on for a little bit, but got Godspeed. Get to your laundry. All right. Take care of that. Your mom will be happy if you do.
All right. Thank you, sir.
All right.
Have a good week.
I'll be right back. All right, that brings us to my segment with Alison Morrow. For those of you who don't know Alison Morrow, she is a former TV reporter in the Seattle area. And a few years ago, she quit her job to pursue an independent career. She's since been in a legal battle with the state of Washington. They fired her from a job for hosting too many COVID skeptics on her channel for interview. Now, Alison does great work, not only in general, but she's done great work with me personally. Alison interviewed me a few years back about the story of my brother. Of course, as most of you know, my brother was an Army paratrooper who was hit by IED on patrol outside of Kandahar, Afghanistan. And my family later lost him to suicide. And of course, that's always been a very difficult thing for me to discuss publicly. The first time I told that story in full detail was with Alison, because I have respect for her work and I trusted her to handle it well. And she did a great job. That interview is still on the homepage of my website if you haven't seen it and you'd like to check it out. But this week, she interviewed Richard Mack of the Constitutional Sheriffs and Peace Officers Association. It's a very interesting legal topic that these sheriffs are pursuing. And I believe they're correct in their perspective. But their position is that the sheriffs are the top law enforcement officers in their counties. They are not subordinate to the federal government. And so they push back against federal attempts to make them enforce federal law. Now, most famously in Richard Mack's case, it was against federal gun law. This was in the 90s. He challenged the Clinton administration. And that was a case that he challenged all the way to the Supreme Court and won, sort of a landmark 10th Amendment case that often gets ignored. Alison is unable to join live. And so she has to do a pre-record, but that's why we pre-recorded the segment. And we get into the constitutional sheriff topic, as well as updates in her personal story, of which there are many. The segment is about a half hour. I will see you on the other side for plenty of hoax hate.
Because I have maintained that the sheriff is the chief law enforcement officer in his county. No one supersedes the authority of the sheriff, primarily because of history, and two, because he's the only elected law enforcement officer in the country. He answers directly to the power source, we the people.
Welcome back. I am pleased to host my guest for the evening. Alison Morrow is a former TV news reporter turned independent. You can follow her news, analysis, and interviews on her locals page, alisonmorrow.locals.com, linked in the description. Alison, thank you for making time for me.
Yeah, thanks. It's an honor to be here, Matt.
Well, a lot of my audience is familiar with some of our prior interactions, so they're familiar with you. But for people who haven't met you yet, give us a little bit of background. What is the Alison Morrow story?
I was a producer for Fox News Channel right out of college. 2003 to 2004 kind of dates me. Somewhere around there. And then I went to graduate school. I was a producer at Fox for Fox and Friends, the morning show. Started as an intern and then they hired me on. I did about a year of that and then jumped into graduate work actually at Boston University School of Theology. I took a total 180 and went to school thinking I was going to be a psychologist with a background in religion and religious studies. Once I finished my 3-year degree there, I decided I wanted to get back into news, but I was going to try it as a reporter. So I first worked in Macon, Georgia, Knoxville, Tennessee, Tampa, Florida, and then finally Seattle, Washington. In Seattle, I worked for the NBC affiliate King 5. I became the environmental reporter. I focused on the environment for about 5 years. And then in 2019, I quit, took a job with the Department of Natural Resources as a communication specialist, started really working on my podcast. 2020 hits. With the pandemic, I focused on media analysis and censorship because I saw how terribly the mainstream news was doing with COVID issues. And I wanted to let people know what I thought as somebody who had worked in these newsrooms. Just because, hey, if you're going to make a lifelong, life-altering decision, you might as well know that a lot of the stuff that gets into the news is not vetted in the way that the newsrooms would like you to believe. And that led me to where I am now, which is suing the state of Washington in federal court because my bosses at the Department of Natural Resources fired me when I refused to stop focusing on censorship because I was interviewing doctors and scientists that they said were undermining their vaccine mandate. I told them I had a First Amendment right to continue. They disagreed. They fired me. So that's the story. That's the short version of where I am now. But I'm basically a former TV reporter who now does independent media analysis, and I focus on civil liberties and a lot of First Amendment issues. I like to go directly with the people I see discussed in these mainstream news pieces because I want to know firsthand, what do they really think? Are they being unfairly treated? Often that is the case. You'll talk to somebody who sounds like a very terrible human being according to NBC or CBS, and I listen to them and I think, I don't know if it makes me a terrible human being, but I kind of agree with a lot of the things that they're saying.
Yeah.
So anyway,
and,
it's been
and you're
really
very good
fun
at that.
actually to be in the I'm in the rebel corner, I guess now. But
well, if you're not in that
sums it
corner
up.
by now, I don't know what you're doing. You have
I
to be
know.
a crazy person. But yeah, you're very good at tracking down the people in the story, and that's how I found you at first. I remember you were covering the story of that New Mexico police officer who was killed by some kind of drug runner guy. I can't remember what exactly the guy was doing, but he was gunned down on the side of the interstate. And there were all sorts of questions about the role of federal drug enforcement agents and things. And you had talked to the attorney for the family, and your ability to get the people in the story, I think, is really great. And it's one thing that I hope to learn from you over time because nobody ever responds to my emails. But I want to get into your lawsuit against the state of Washington before we're finished up. But this week you were interviewing Richard Mack, who is the founder of the Constitutional Sheriffs and Peace Officers Association, former sheriff of Graham County, Arizona. And the idea here, as far as I understand it, is that the sheriff is the chief law enforcement officer of his county. He's not subordinate to anybody else, including and especially the federal government. So can you expand a little bit more on Richard Mack, his philosophy, and what you learned from him talking to him?
I think there are two really important takeaways when you meet Sheriff Mack. The first is to understand what rights the federal government has to force local law enforcement to do things like background checks, for instance, or restrict gun rights. And Sheriff Mack's case that went all the way to the Supreme Court when he sued the Clinton administration over the Brady bill is something that journalists rarely ever discuss. And they call him a sheriff who believes he's above the law. But the reality is, if you hear him talk about the Supreme Court case, and for instance, he'll quote Justice Scalia, what they found was that actually his argument was that he was in line with the law. One of the reasons I really found him interesting is because, like I said, there's this movement in journalism to pick out what these reporters believe to be extremism, people who are, quote, attacking democracy or undermining democracy, almost represented as total complete anarchists, like they or really fascists, right? That's the word everybody uses nowadays, fascists. And the reality is, when you hear him talk about his case, where he said when the Brady bill came his way and the federal government said, hey, you're going to have to restrict gun rights in these specific ways, and he is a very strong 2A advocate, he says, no, I'm not going to do that, and you can't force me. His case really brought forward whether, number one, the federal government can force a local sheriff to do its bidding. And that becomes important fast forward 20, 25 years later when we have COVID, right? Because there were a lot of measures that what could have been different if the sheriffs had said, you know what, we're not going to play this game. So his case is very important, and perhaps that's why journalists, maybe they don't know about it, or maybe it's kind of scary for them and that's why they don't bring it up. So that's one reason I think Sheriff Mack's story is important to understand, is his case, which challenged the federal government on the Brady Bill, which was a 10th Amendment case, basically states' rights case, local law enforcement case, and then also whether the Second Amendment should be restricted in those particular ways. The other thing about him, though, that I think is important in a modern context is that now he's kind of become central to this hysteria about rogue constitutionalists, people who just don't want to play nice in the United
It's such
States.
a contradiction in terms. I'm not laughing. I'm laughing at the people who say this kind of stuff. And in fairness, I saw you guys, I think you were referencing this book or this write-up in Rolling Stone during your interview, so I went to read it. And I have not read the book, in fairness to our author, Jessica Pishko. So full disclosure, I've not read the book. But I do find the premise of the book, the highest law in the land, how the unchecked power of sheriffs threatens democracy, to the theme you're talking about. Now, there's a significant check on the power of sheriffs. It's the fact that they don't have jurisdiction over very much. They have jurisdiction over a county or a limited place. And if you don't like how law enforcement is run in that town or the laws in that town or the region or that state, you go away, you leave, you move somewhere else. That is a significant check on power, actually. When you put power in the federal government the way that you're talking about, nobody can escape that. We are all under that thumb. There's nothing you can do about it. And
also, Matt, if you think about it, you're right. You can't move to a different place because the federal government forces A, B, or C on your local elected official. But if the states or the local governments have a check on the federal government's power, if that's in fact what the 10th Amendment means, then just like you said, you have the choice to get away. If you don't like your local sheriff, you can just go to another county.
Or you could vote for a different guy. That's the part I forgot too. You could run for sheriff yourself, you know?
Right, exactly. Right. So he's important not just from the constitutional aspect, like understanding the case that he brought to the Supreme Court, but now how it's being rejuvenated, I guess, in today's environment to scare people that folks like him are creating this new Wild West in the United States. And Matt,
sorry to interrupt, there is a reverse on that. We're seeing all sorts of pushback from local officials, state officials on, say, coming immigration enforcement. Sorry, the feds don't have authority to force us to participate in their deportation program or to round up illegal immigrants. All of a sudden, the exact same argument becomes very convenient to them when it's pursuant to a purpose they like, as opposed to pursuant to a purpose they don't.
Yeah, one of the cases that was quoted by Justice Scalia that Sheriff Mack brought up was a long time ago. New York won its fight to not take some kind of radioactive, I believe it was nuclear waste. It was just really bad stuff, hazardous stuff. Yeah. And you would think you're right. The sort of the environmentalists that would align with kind of the neoliberal Democrat way of looking at the world, that's great that New York has the right to say, screw you, federal government, we're not taking your hazardous waste. But when it's something that they don't like, it's like, wait a second, the federal government should have all the rights and all the power, and they just can't seem to see the forest through the trees. And that has happened on so many issues, like censorship is one of them. We have to protect the public. It's public safety issue, misinformation, and never having the foresight to see how that just gets turned around eventually when your people are not the ones in power. Now all of a sudden you have created this speech dictatorship just because you didn't like what certain people were saying. Like, have a little bit of foresight to see how this eventually turns around on you. But a lot of people seemingly do not consider that.
That's a tall order these days. But I do have the clip from your interview of the sheriff discussing his win at the Supreme Court and some of the reasoning that was cited by Justice Scalia, if you'd like me to play that.
Sure.
Scalia introduces it saying he's going to give us a history lesson. He's not trying to protect political dogma or political agendas, which most of them do today. The first thing he quotes is the decision of New York v. U.S. In 1992, New York won a case against the federal government because the feds were trying to force New York to take hold and store nuclear waste. And New York said, we don't want that crap here, and you can't force us to take it. You're not our boss. And they won. New York won. This is what they said in New York. Again, Scalia quoting from a previous decision. I will quote it, and I have it memorized. We have held, however, this is quote, we have held, however, that state legislatures are not subject to federal direction, end quote.
Yeah. Pretty simple concept that we're losing track of, losing touch with.
One of the interesting aspects that he brought up about why he sued and refused to comply with the Brady bill is that he felt like it would have given him as the sheriff the power to essentially restrict gun rights on people that could be political adversaries. You know, mental health issues under the name of safety. We always hear this, public safety or mental health. And he said it was just so broad that he, as the sheriff, if he didn't like somebody, hey, you voted for the guy I ran against, or I don't like your wife, or whatever, that it would easily have given him the authority to restrict gun rights for people he just didn't like. And he was very concerned about that, even though it would give him power, right? And you could see how somebody with their mind in the wrong headspace would say, "Oh, this is awesome. Now I get to be the one who decides." And he didn't want to. And so it's so funny when you see people like him quoted in the media as this like power hungry, like I said, power hungry, just rogue anarchists that just want to take over, and they don't want to be a part of the democratic process, which we don't even have. And that's another thing he and I talked about, the constitutional republic, and how we constantly say democracy, democracy, democracy.
Yeah.
And is that a whole, another word game that's being played in order to shift us in a particular direction?
Oh, absolutely.
But,
yeah.
yeah. Somebody else would say, oh, I would love to have the power because they just think it's great. One of the reasons that I continually have said, I don't want to decide what you, Matt, or someone else, Alex Jones, or Lester Holt, or whoever can say on the internet, is because I do not trust myself to get it right all of the time. And I don't want to be the person who's deciding that you should be able to say what you want to say because I could get it wrong. But, it's just funny how I think a lot of people who like really cheer for this kind of power, I question, do you think if you were in the position, first off, like the government, do they ever get it wrong? I mean, is it possible that they're going to abuse
if government is
power?
God, then no. That's the first problem. If government is God, then government is always right by definition. But the second problem is what you're asking of people is to have a little bit of humility, to understand the limitations of their own knowledge and capability. Yeah. Good luck. Now, I hope one day we restore that sort of thing. But yeah, it's tough now. But I do have one more clip from the interview. I forget exactly. It's another clip of Sheriff Mack quoting some of the reasoning from the decision. But I wanted to play that before I move on from that.
He quotes the Federalist Papers. Can you believe this? He's quoting the founders in the Federalist Papers. Quoting, hence, a double security arises to the rights of the people. Well, how does that happen? Quoting again, the different governments will control each other. Now, do you know why the experts don't want to quote my decision? Because it completely contradicts everything they're lying about. And that's why they won't do it. Next one, last quote. This is so powerful. The Constitution protects us. Okay. But the Constitution protects us from our own best intentions. It divides power among sovereigns and among branches of government precisely so that we may resist the temptation, which is exactly what government did, resist the temptation to concentrate power in one location as an expedient solution to the crisis of the day.
Yeah, divided power and humility.
Yeah.
He's speaking a lot of truth there.
Yeah. And when he mentions the crisis of the day and how easily this power has been abused and slipped in under the name of any number of crises. And obviously COVID is, I think, on the forefront of our memory right now. But, there have been many of those instances in my lifetime. And I think it can be really tough to resist the temptation when you're seeing the world hysterical around you to take the risk and be the person to say, wait a second, especially if, hey, in your particular case, your political side, for instance, might be the ones that are hysterical. And a lot of people get a lot of flack for standing up to their own groups. But it works in both ways. And I think we've seen this encroachment of federal power over the decades, not just because Democrats have abused it, but we've seen it on the right. And it almost always is in a time of fear mongering, really. So I found Sheriff Mack to be a rather reasonable person when I read the articles about him. He just had an investigation done about constitutional sheriffs by ASU, which is the Walter Cronkite School of Journalism. It's like the premier journalism school in the United States, next to maybe Mizzou, which is in Columbia, in Missouri. And, this is where the next generation of journalists are going to be trained. And they did this investigation and came across basically with his being a threat to our very life here in the United States as we know it. So I guess that's the third takeaway, really, is that the next generations of journalists, we're seeing just like from this investigation that ASU did, that this is what they're being trained in. So I don't really have a whole lot of hope for those who are, taking the reins in the newsrooms.
I didn't know much about the Constitutional Sheriffs and Peace Officers Association. And because I heard you talking about it, and in preparation for talking to you about it, I decided I needed to learn a little bit. So I'm Googling around I don't know if this was the first hit if you search the name of their organization, but it's close. And it's the whole Southern Poverty Law Center right up. Not only do they have abject disrespect for the rule of law, which is very interesting.
Right.
Considering he was a guy who was elected to office and took his case through the legal process to the Supreme Court and won. Right. But yes, disdain for the rule of law.
Yeah.
But I'm scrolling down. He's hateful by association.
Yep. Because the Oath Keepers. Yeah, they bring up the Oath Keepers.
There's the Oath Keepers, and he has associations with anti-Semites, and he's a white supremacist by proxy because of his close relationship with known white supremacist Randy Weaver, the guy they characterize as provoking the government at Ruby Ridge. That's what Randy Weaver is famous for. Famous government provocateur, white supremacist Randy Weaver. Thank you to the Southern Poverty Law Center for informing me before I went and read about Sheriff Mack myself and listened to you talk to him.
Yep. And the Anti-Defamation League, they say the same thing. In fact, when I introed him on my show, I was like, okay, am I getting it right? You're an extremist, right-wing extremist, racist, rogue sheriff guy who is threatening democracy. Am I getting that right? And he was like, you're being too nice. You're being too nice. You're being too soft. He was like, I'm also a white supremacist. And named like an anti-Jew, anti-Semite, named all of the things. And I was like, okay, that's a lot to break down. We'll start with the first one. So, but nowadays you just can't take anything seriously. And it honestly, it's fascinating to me because the folks who are so angry that like, nobody cares about any of this stuff. We're just such a racist country. And we don't, part of the problem is that when you cry fire, you scream fire so many times, people they don't listen to you anymore. And like, it doesn't mean anything anymore. So if you don't like the fact that people don't take you seriously, if there's in fact an actual danger or something, then it's because you turned everything into a crazy overblown mess. And you lost people on that one. That's why they don't listen anymore. And that is just one of the most fascinating, I think, aspects of where we are now with this culture war is that the folks who are sitting there thinking, I don't know how we got here. I mean, I just don't know how we got here. I mean, how do we get to be such a racist country? I'm sitting there just burying my head. Look, I can't help you. If you don't know how we got here with people tuning out to the mainstream news, not caring when you say someone's a white supremacist, then I just can't help you anymore. And I think, me personally, I don't know about you, Matt, but I do a lot less like debating with people nowadays. I just don't know if it really does anything. I think we're kind of all living in alternative universes right now, and I'm just gonna do my show, and I'm not gonna comment with people on social media anymore, like trying to debate folks on Facebook. I think it's a total waste of time.
I've lost too many friends that way. So yeah, I'm interested in talking to people of other perspectives, of course. It doesn't happen too often, but I try to keep myself open to it. But as far as like engaging in comment wars and social media wars, no, I'm out on that. I post my material and I move on with my day.
Right.
But,
yeah.
Before I let you go, by the way, if people want to learn more about the Constitutional Sheriffs and Peace Officers Association, it's cspoa.org. Don't waste your time Googling and ending up in a Southern Poverty Law Center article. cspoa.org. And before I let you go, Alison, I wanted to give you a chance to talk about your lawsuit against the state of Washington for their firing of you regarding your internet interviews with COVID skeptics.
Right. Well, basically on my personal time, and they knew this when they hired me, I was beginning my independent journalism work. And one of the reasons I switched from TV news to working for the state of Washington was because I knew I wanted to grow this independent journalism on the side. And I wanted to work for a place where I would have speech protection, because when I worked for TV news, I had a contract that said they basically owned everything that I did and said. And so there was no way I was going to be going on the internet saying, I think this, or I think that, or interviewing this person they didn't like, or whatever. And, honestly, I didn't really have a problem with that. They're a private company, and, I was a journalist. So, I was a local journalist in Seattle, and I could understand why my TV newsroom would be like, hey, we don't want you like going on and doing all this other stuff that's going to distract from our local news. I get it. I'm not sure, maybe a constitutional attorney would say my contract with TV news was illegal, but as far as the government, I mean, no question. So I'm thinking, all right, I'm going to leave TV news. I'm going to go work for the state of Washington, low-key position, communication specialist, doing videos about wildfire, basically going out and interviewing firefighters and talking about what they're doing on the front lines of the fires, and then controlled burns in the off season, and what they're doing to try to get rid of this underbrush and just control the fire issue that we were having in Washington. And then in my personal time, they encouraged me, keep going with your YouTube channel. In fact, they really liked that I had this social media following. I think they were hoping that I was going to be promoting them on social media. This is great. We have somebody who already has a following. Keep going with it. The thing that they did not like is when all of a sudden, here I am and I'm interviewing people that they don't like. When I was doing stuff that they didn't care about, like, hey, this is what's in Clorox wipes. They're toxic. Try using hydrogen peroxide. That kind of stuff.
Dang it, I love my Clorox wipes. I'm going to have to
don't say that.
Restock my kitchen.
I will change your mind about that.
All right.
Someday.
Another time.
But yeah, so that was fine. But then all of a sudden, COVID hits, and I start doing this media analysis, and I'm finding doctors all over the place that are losing their jobs or being investigated by the Washington Medical Commission or elsewhere. Like, the interview that got me in real hot water was Dr. Aaron Cariotti, who was a medical ethics director at the University of California. And he was citing his natural immunity in a lawsuit against the school to avoid getting the COVID shot. And this was such a radical interview that YouTube removed the interview because we're not allowed to talk about natural immunity. And I had to go to Twitter to say, Twitter, YouTube, pay attention. You took my video down. There's nothing wrong with it. And get all my friends to retweet it and get YouTube's attention. That was successful. They reinstated my video. But when my bosses saw that, they were like, who is this doctor? So they looked at my YouTube channel like, whoa, you can't interview this guy. And then they looked at this other, you can't interview that doctor. And in fact, it was kind of funny, Matt. At one point in the phone call with them, I asked, well, can you be a little more specific about the videos that are not okay by your standards? And my boss said, basically nothing. Basically, there is nothing even close to what we would consider to be acceptable at the Department of Natural Resources, because we have a vaccine mandate. Essentially they're saying I'm underrunning their mandate. In other words, the factual information and the different opinions of the experts that I was interviewing were giving employees an idea that was different than what the bosses in charge, like the Commissioner of Public Lands, was trying to get people to believe.
Yeah.
And so I was giving them, I was giving them a different perspective on it. And my gosh, maybe they might refuse, say, I'm not doing this.
This is really interesting. I don't know a lot about this area of First Amendment law, and so I'm sure your legal team is on top of it. A lot of times government as employer, they have a little more leeway with what they can control about your speech. Now, of course, this was on your own time, too. This was not at work or anything like that. But the way you've described it to me, and this really sounds like a bait and switch type thing. This was, okay, you can come work here under these terms. Oh, wait, now we're changing the terms retroactively.
Yeah.
And so is that kind of part of the consideration, or is that an aside?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's in the lawsuit.
Okay.
It's in the lawsuit that they encouraged me to continue with social media, and there were no restrictions. In fact, I had a conversation with a guy who hired me and asked that question specifically, and his response was, well, we're being sued over spraying Roundup right now, so we would prefer that you not discuss Roundup because your commentary could become part of the lawsuit.
You're anti-Roundup too? That stuff works. That took care of the weed.
Oh man. So anyway,
it's still legal in this state. Anyway,
it's illegal.
It's illegal in a lot of states. What is it? The glyphosate or whatever? I don't know what the
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean,
I had some weeds
works.
to kill, and it took care of them.
Yeah, well, we can go down that rabbit hole another day. But anyway, they that was like more of like we would prefer to have you not do this. And even that one topic was not like, in order to work here, you cannot talk about glyphosate. So, but that was literally the only thing that was even mentioned. Now, okay, they might say, well, COVID wasn't a thing at the time. Like, how are we supposed to know? But they could have said, well, you can't talk about anything that undermines agency policy. But that's not what they said. They said, well, we would prefer you not do glyphosate. Because trust me, Matt, if they had said something like, you can't veer from agency policy, I would have been like, nah, I'm not going to take this job.
Yeah,
because I gave up a 6-figure salary and 5 weeks of vacation to go work there. Why would I give all that up for less money and the same problems with my ability to speak freely online?
Certainly the terms have to be clear at the start. Whatever you may or may not be willing to agree to, it can't just be we make it up as we go and we don't like that opinion, so that one has to be shut down.
Yeah. Now, I could have gotten it in writing, but I guess I just assumed that I had First Amendment protections because I work for the government. So anyway, I'm sure that'll come into it.
Yeah.
Who knows what they'll say, but there was no contract. There was no employee contract, which on one level works in my favor and may work in theirs.
Well, if people want to help you out in this lawsuit effort, I've got the Give, Send, Go. I assume that's where we should send people. It's Alison Free Speech Fight. GiveSendGo.com/Alison Free Speech Fight. Alison with one L. Don't get confused on the second L.
Right. That's right.
And you can find that there. At what stage is the lawsuit right now?
We filed 4 days before my statute of limitation was up, mid-October.
Okay.
And I believe that the next step is just waiting for the state to respond, whether they're going to say, we want this to be dismissed, which they probably will. My lawyers expect probably end of the year, beginning of next year is when we'll get a response from them, and then we'll go from there.
Okay. Well, again, GiveSendGo.com/Alison Free Speech Fight. Alison with one L if you'd like to help her out with the lawsuit effort. If you'd like to find Alison's material, AlisonMorrow.locals.com. Again, Alison with one L. Morrow, MORROW.locals.com. Alison, is there anywhere else you'd like to send people to find you?
That works. I mean, if you're someone who's just watching on YouTube and you haven't explored some of these other sites, you can always just go to my YouTube channel and you'll find all the links in the description of my channel. But I really appreciate it, Matt. Thanks for having me on.
Of course. Thanks for stopping by, and I appreciate all the information. Thanks again to my guest, Alison Morrow. Find her work linked in the description, alisonmorrow.locals.com, at Alison Morrow on YouTube. I also have her GoFundMe, Give, Send, Go, not GoFundMe, Give, Send, Go page linked in the description as well if you'd like to support her legal fight. But of course, it is that time of the night.
And now, the nobody saw it happen, but it's totally a product of Trump's America hoax hate crime of the week.
Ah, shit, it's backwards. You think they'll notice? Now, perhaps you heard of this shocking development. A white Northern European biological woman, as far as I'm aware, my sources say straight even, this person was allowed to win Miss Universe recently. Seems impossible. It is apparently true. Victoria, I'm going to butcher this, Victoria Kjarthilvig? That's a name I should know how to pronounce on account of my Danish heritage, but I have no idea. She is a Danish woman, in fact, the first Dane to win Miss Universe. She's apparently touring the world on account of her new fame. And she caused controversy last weekend by lip-syncing the N-word while playing Jay-Z's Empire State of Mind while visiting New York City.
Nigga, I be spiked out. I could trip a referee. Tell by my attitude.
So she kind of mouthed the soft A version of the N-word.
He said the N-word.
Unclear if she did, in fact, say the word or just mouthed it. But social media users have demanded her scalp. The Miss Universe organization quasi-apologized in response. They issued a statement, quote, "Both Victoria and our team recognize the importance of fostering an environment of respect, inclusivity, and cultural awareness in everything we do. This moment has been a valuable reminder of our responsibility to remain sensitive to the diverse perspectives of our global community." As far as I can see, though, Miss Universe herself has not apologized, so good for her. I hope she says, "I'll apologize" right after Jay-Z and Alicia Keys do, because they're the ones who put this racist filth, Empire State of Mind, out into the public domain. There's some potential hoax hate going on in Congress. Since Election Day, there have been several bomb threats or general threats of violence. All of them apparently false, at least insofar as none have been acted upon. Some of them have targeted incoming members. Some of these threats have targeted incoming members of the Trump cabinet. Some of them have reportedly targeted members of Congress. Well, House Democrat leader Hakeem Jeffries says that Democrat members of Congress have received bomb threats signed MAGA, as in Make America Great Again. According to Politico, the Office of House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries denounced Thanksgiving Day threats made against Democratic members of Congress that ranged from detailed threats of a pipe bomb placed in mailboxes to swatting. Maybe they put the pipe bomber from January 6th back to work. Who knows? Each of the threats was, quote, "signed with MAGA" at the conclusion of the message, the Minority Leader's office said in a statement on Friday. Nearly all of the House and Senate Democrats from Connecticut were the targets of bomb threats at their homes on Thursday, including Senator Chris Murphy and Representatives Jim Hines, Joe Courtney, John Larson, Johanna Hayes, and Rosa DeLauro. Police did not find evidence of devices at the lawmakers' residences, Jeffries' office confirmed. Now, as far as I've seen, not one piece of actual proof as far as the MAGA signatures. To say that they were signed, these threats were signed, implies that they were written. Can we see the threats with the signatures? Can we see the writing that you're alleging? Perhaps this will be Jussie's new career now that he has emerged victorious at the Illinois State Supreme Court. Maybe he will be a congressional hate hoax consultant, perhaps coordinator. Or maybe it's all true. Maybe Hakeem Jeffries did get Subway last week, and many are very angry and have tried to get retribution for that act. Who knows what's going on in Congress? Now, In Catalina, Arizona, outside of Tucson, local Nazis are apparently very fed up with the local mail delivery. And they have made their frustrations known on area residential mailboxes.
The Catalina homeowner who first alerted News 4 Tucson to the swastikas and anti-Jewish language spray painted on mailboxes here in Catalina tells me her first reaction to seeing Nazi symbols right next to where she lives.
Like I had been kicked in the stomach. It was that kind of traumatic, horrible experience.
Maria Jenis has lived in Catalina for years. One of these mailboxes tagged with swastikas and anti-Semitic language is hers. She reported this to the Pima County Sheriff's Department over the weekend as a hate crime.
This is a wonderful community. It really, really makes me sick to see some of the ugliest symbols in human history written on mailboxes, which are federal property, right by my beautiful community.
Now, in fairness, okay, I gather the swastika is part of the context there. But when he says that anti-Jewish language was written on there, it just said Jews. At least what they showed there. How do we know it wasn't yay Jews, yes Jews, go Jews? All right. They were badly drawn. I didn't catch the swastikas. Were they in fact backward? That's my job to assess, and I missed that. So I should go look at the orientation. Now, I get it. The word Jews written next to swastikas implies that you're not a fan. But highly doubt this is as claimed, of course. What I found interesting about this news report was not, the traditional methods. Oh, someone spray painted that they hate me next on property near my home. Oh, man. It's that this woman seems to think that federal property somehow makes the crime more offensive. You heard her say there, oh, it's not just hate. It's hate on federal property, the federal property of the mailboxes. That doesn't make the crime more offensive. That doesn't make the crime worse. At best, federal property is the same as any other property. But there's a pretty good argument that federal property is of less significance than private property because much of federal property is maintained only by taking from people against their will. It's not maintained by providing actual market value. And this perspective, this argument, I think has a lot to do with our social disconnect on January 6th, for example. I have seen so many progressives on X saying something to the effect of, I can't believe how many Americans are willing to look past this or are willing to excuse this. And there's some kind of picture of January 6th. The implication in a lot of these posts is that the Capitol is some special piece of property, some holy site. It isn't. It's a piece of property like any other. There's nothing special about it. I get that it's our capital. There's some national symbolism, I suppose. But as a matter of law, the protections that apply to that piece of property are the exact same as every other piece of property, or at least should be in principle. The same rules apply there. But I really think that's what's behind a lot of that growing divide in this country. People who view government and its property as some sort of special class, some sort of higher than, above than, better than, and regular people who understand, no, that it's not a special class, it's the same thing. So if you want to understand these competing interpretations of January 6th, it really takes that simple question. Do you believe that government is God or not? And if the answer is or not, yeah, it was a riot that got a little out of control. Certainly no worse, though, than the Summer of Love that happened before it. If instead you view government as God and the Capitol as some sort of holy site, well, then it's a demonic attack on all that is holy and good. And I thought that little piece of this in this story was interesting. Oh, it's not just hate. It's hate on a mailbox, which is owned by the federal government. Oh, no, not that, please. In this case, as you'd expect, no suspects. Now, back in August, I discussed the story of a transgender teenager in Gloucester, Massachusetts, allegedly beaten up by peers for being transgender. Here is the original story from back then.
1 second I was having fun, and the next second I was on the ground getting my face stomped and beat up.
16-year-old Jaden Tkachuk is recovering from a broken bone in his face, nerve damage, a head injury, and bruises all over his body.
They were just saying the F slur over and over and over and over as they were punching me and stomping me.
He says he went to hang out in the Gloucester woods with friends Friday night when he was attacked by 20 to 30 people. The transgender student believes he knows why.
They clearly had mentioned that in the past that they don't like me because I'm trans, and also because one of the main culprits, he's dating my ex-girlfriend, so he really doesn't like me.
Police are investigating the incident as a possible hate crime and have brought in a specially trained civil rights detective.
This has always been my worst fear as a mom of a trans teen, getting that phone call that your son is in the hospital for getting beat up.
Several things about this story as presented back then made no sense. First of all, what the hell am I looking at, okay? In what way is this a tranny? It would seem that this is a young man who now considers himself a young woman. If you listen to the totality of that interview, he describes playing football. Oh, my football team hated me. I had to leave because they wouldn't stop bullying me. Okay, I assume then you are a male if you're on the football team. But then again, I guess it's Massachusetts. Maybe I'm behind the times. But what's even more confusing is during that segment, mom, complaining about the treatment of her trans child, says, "Oh, I can't believe my trans son is being treated this way." Is he your trans son? I thought he was presenting as female. And honestly, I have no idea. I assume I'm looking at a biological male presenting as female when you say transgender. But then she describes him as her son. The headline from NBC News says transgender boy. You got like the pencil mustache. Is that just an effect of testosterone treatment? I have no idea. But that's really not the core of what doesn't make sense here. The rest of the story doesn't make any sense. As told by him, you were attacked just for being trans because you showed up at a party where you know that you have enemies. Do you just walk around in the woods? You love to go for late night forest walks that happen to be near parties that your enemies are having? Do you do this frequently? What exactly were you doing at this party with all of your enemies there if you don't get along with these people? And that's why, of course, it wasn't a hate crime at all. There was a beating. That wasn't fake. There were clearly other motives in play, though. This week, local prosecutors announced they will bring charges against some of the kids involved, but there will be no hate crime charges because the evidence does not support it.
Back in August, we told you about a teenager who reported being assaulted in the woods, and now Gloucester police say 3 teens are facing charges in connection with the alleged assault. Now, we talked to the victim right after the attack. His family wanted the attack on the transgender teen to be investigated as a hate crime, but a special investigator determined the evidence does not support hate crime charges. Instead, today, the 2 17-year-olds and 1 16-year-old are being charged with assault and battery.
They brought in a special hate crime detective and still couldn't drum it up. There are apparently several videos of the fight. I haven't seen them, but investigators say they are in possession of them. According to the claims I've seen, though, this kid showed up at the party with a knife and threatened people. I'll emphasize I've not confirmed that and seen the video myself. I've seen people saying that in their social media accounts. So for the purposes of avoiding defamation, I'm not saying that's 100% the case. I'm saying that's what people with knowledge are saying. Shows up to the party with a knife and threatens people, and then a fight happened, okay? Which makes a lot more sense than these kids simply saw him and beat him up for being trans. No, it sounds like this kid went to confront his enemies over some sort of dispute about a girl, and he possibly or probably had a weapon. And because of that, a fight happened, and he lost the fight. And then he and his mom ran to the media to play victim, is how this story developed. Lastly, for several weeks, I've been following the story of the mayor of Colorado Springs, whose name I still can't say, Yemi Mobolade. When Yemi was running for office last year, several people perpetrated a hoax hate crime by spray painting the N-word on one of his campaign signs and then burning a cross in front of it. 3 were indicted by the feds, and the feds initially claimed that the mayor himself had no involvement, as did reporting on the story, local reporting. And then last week, in a Daily Wire report, it came out, at least according to that reporting, that the mayor was, in fact, very closely involved because, of course, he was. That's the only way the story makes any sense. But this is according to the Daily Wire speaking with DOJ sources, speaking anonymously, but claiming to have knowledge. And the sources said that there actually was lots of text communication between the mayor and the people who did the hoax, contrary to what news reports were saying and contrary to what the impression of the mayor had given and even the federal, the DOJ press release had given. So according to this source, there was lots of text communication between the mayor and the people who did the hoax, and the mayor lied to the FBI about that communication, and the FBI let him off the hook because they didn't want the political optics of criminally charging the first black mayor of the city. This week, the mayor addressed the new developments in a statement, and he's doubling down on the original story. He had no knowledge or involvement. Quote, "I had no knowledge, warning, or involvement in this reprehensible act," according to the statement released Wednesday. Quote, "I fully cooperated in the investigation, and it is important that the judicial process is followed to allow for a successful prosecution that brings justice for our community." Not prosecution for him, prosecution for his friends that he says aren't really his friends. And I would bet my entire life that this is an additional lie on top of the original lie. Why? Because as discussed at the time, nobody hoaxes a hate crime on behalf of somebody else without their knowledge. There is nobody in that town who is so enthusiastic for someone else's mayoral campaign with which they have no official involvement. You have no connection to the candidate. You just love his mayoral campaign and the prospect of his mayoral tenure so much that you're willing to do this elaborate hate hoax. Nobody does that and puts themselves at in potential criminal jeopardy, at criminal risk for it, unless they're put up to it. That's how you know the mayor was involved. This is Jussie Smollett stuff, not just in theme, but assuredly in contract, in business strategy. What happened here is the mayor hired these people to commit the hoax or otherwise put them up to it. Number one, to make sure that it really happened physically, which it did. And 2, to give himself some sort of plausible distance from doing the actual act himself. We'll see if Colorado Springs realizes that and investigates any further, or if voters take it into their own hands. But with that, I will catch up with chat and we'll call it a night. Over on YouTube, Griff Nizzle says, "I'll see your shadow cabinet Dems and raise you a star chamber. One gives rebuttals that are lame and gay, the other extrajudiciously." That's always tough to say. See, I can't do it. Extrajudiciously. Deletes PDF files and the like. Your move. Can I say your move? I'm going to say faggots is how you pronounce that. Faggots.
You're a faggot.
Thank you, Griff Nizzle. We'll see how much of a reality this shadow cabinet prospect becomes. Esoteric Unbound says, "The problem with McCabe isn't the corruption or unchecked government power. It's that he's a tribalist idiot and the federal government is full of people just like him. The country may collapse under the weight of their stupidity." Yeah, there are many ways to assess the faults and stupidity of that man, and I assuredly did not cover all of them in my brief discussion and exploration. Appreciate your support for the show, Esoterica Unbound. Hope you are well. Let me check in with Rumble over here. One question earlier, this is technically against the rules, but it's a question I figure I'll answer just because I appreciate the question. How did you become so well-versed in, this is Yvonne, 626. How did you become so well-versed in constitutional law? Are you an ex-lawyer? Well, thank you for the compliment.
We love you. You're very special.
I don't know how well-versed I am, but I've read some things. I'm not an ex-lawyer. In fact, as people who have listened for a long time probably know, I once took the LSAT and did very terribly and decided against ever pursuing a law school or legal career. I didn't take the LSAT very seriously, and I paid the price. I thought you can't really just skate through that one. You have to devote a significant amount of time to it, and I didn't, and I did not perform well. But the other reason I decided against law school is because I have a philosophical interest in the law. I really have no interest in the practicality of becoming a lawyer. I don't want to go represent people in some sort of corporate dispute or even represent people in criminal proceedings or anything like that. I just want to understand the philosophy of the law. And an advisor back when I was still in college is like, well, you don't really go to dental school to learn about the philosophy of teeth cleaning. There's a practical reality, and it's if you're going to acquire all that debt, you are going to assume a certain profession in order to pay for all that. And so I opted not to go to law school. But constitutional law, constitutional philosophy is something that is very interesting to me, something that I think is very important, something that I think we don't learn enough of, say, in high school in this country. And so I took a lot of classes in my undergraduate political science program, obviously about the social science of politics, but about constitutional law and much to my benefit, the constitutional law classes I did take, which were basic things like the First Amendment, we did the 14th Amendment and due process, but they were taught like a law school class, as in the professor you have certain cases that are assigned, you better read those because the professor is going to cold call you in class, and you better be able to explain the facts of the case, the reasoning of the majority, the reasoning of the dissent, and who's right in your opinion. And if you can't explain those things, you're going to be embarrassed in front of the whole class, and you're probably going to fail. And it was very cutthroat in that way. In fact, it was terrifying to like 20-year-old, 21-year-old me. But even more than the facts of constitutional, like all the important landmark cases, the reasoning behind them, what it means today, that professor, and man, maybe I should get back with him and see if he's interested in chatting again. I won't name him. I'm not even going to name the school because I don't want people to be able to try to find him, although people who know where I went to school probably could. But just a master of the Socratic method. Why? You're wrong. To this day, I don't know his political view. I don't know his philosophy of constitutional law. You say black, he says white. You say up, he says down. And he is going to battle you in front of the whole class, so you better know the cases that were assigned top to bottom, or you're going to get embarrassed. And it sounds hostile. It sounds unpleasant, and at first it is, but when you realize what he's doing, he's so good at it, and probably more than anybody in my entire educational time, shaped not necessarily my perspective, but just the way I think. And I really got to credit him for that. The sort of person that teaches you how to think rather than telling you what to believe. Just a really good dude. And maybe someday I'll reconnect with him. It'd be cool to do that. Thank you, Yvonne. Also says the 10th Amendment has low self-esteem because everyone important ignores it. Yeah. Also, did you teach yourself? Oh, so this is pursuant to the question. Yeah. Did you teach yourself constitutional law? I learned much of what you appear to know in a 2-semester con law course. Yeah. So thank you for the compliment. And then the backhanded compliment. I learned that in a 2-semester. Well, the truth is, yeah, I mean, a lot of what I learned is in about 2 semesters of time too, but it's not just about the subject matter that you learned, as you probably experienced. Like, do I know every case that's been before the Supreme Court off the top of my head? No, of course I don't. But do you have the skill set to read them? Do you have the skill set to understand the facts of a case, the majority reasoning, the dissent's reasoning, the ability to think critically about who's right? Those are the skills that you learn, and the ability to read that sort of stuff and come to an informed opinion about it is key. Thank you, Yvonne. Brandon the Alaskan, Kamala, unburdened by what has gin. Unburdened by what has gin. Okay, one more. I threw up in a middle-class family. Okay, thanks, everybody. Good night and happy Thanksgiving, Matt, you sassy bitch. Well, thank you, Brandon. Happy Thanksgiving to you as well. Your support for the show is much appreciated, and your jokes are just delightful. So thank you for that. Blanket says, Matt, is Christmas your favorite holiday? Yeah, probably. Christmas this year is going to be a little bit different for me because, of course, I've come around to embracing the title of Christian, to embracing the life of following Jesus Christ. Not that I have been hostile to that in the past, but Christmas to me so far in my life has been a lot more secular. It's been a time for family to come together, and there's a certain magic of the season, and everybody enjoys getting presents, and all that stuff is still fun, and I obviously still intend to do that. But the way I think about Christmas now is different since I have committed myself to following the life of the person whose birth is celebrated by that occasion. So it's going to be a little different going forward. I look forward to it. I mean, there's a lot of holidays I love. I love Thanksgiving. I love the food. I love the tradition of getting together with family for that awesome meal and all that. There is a certain just magic about Christmas, though, that I don't think anybody can deny. So, of course, I look forward to it. And I guess it would probably be my favorite holiday. Although I likewise love the 4th of July, man. The fireworks, the patriotism, the parades, the love of country, the camaraderie. 4th of July is a worthy nominee as well. All right. Thank you to Blankets. I think we're all set. DLive looks good. Rumble looks good. Let me give a quick refresh, and we'll see if we're all set for the evening. Looks like we are. So I will call it a show there. Of course, thank you for tuning in tonight. Thanks to you live chatters and super chatters for making the live production a success. If you're listening on demand later, of course, thank you kindly as well for tuning in and supporting the show. Thank you to my guest, Alison Morrow. Find her links in the description, alisonmorrow.locals.com if you want to find her material. Of course, thanks to producer Tim for his help this evening. Thanks to Knuckle Hunkybuck and his pile of laundry for stopping by, as always. If you'd like to find more to listen to, check out the podcast page of my website, mattchristiansenmedia.com/podcasts. You'll find not just the video show, but the audio show, too, if you prefer to listen to audio podcasts. Anything else show related, mattchristiansenmedia.com is where you find it, or mattis.gay if you prefer brevity. I'll be back on Sunday and Wednesday nights, of course. Have a great night and a great week.